walk through this example with ChatGPT. And really what we're showing you is how to do this. You could do this with smaller amounts, 1,500, 3,000, or any amount that you like to find the countries that might fit your needs. So with that, let's dive directly into ChatGPT. Here we are at the ChatGPT screen, and we need to remember that ChatGPT uses data on the web, and sometimes that data is old and outdated. And also that sometimes ChatGPT can hallucinate, create data. So we'll run through examples here, and then we'll see some data inconsistencies. And at the very end, we'll ask it which data is correct. So initially, we use ChatGPT to identify the countries we might be interested in that fit our profile, and then we dive into it. So let's begin by typing in, assuming that I'm a US retiree. Let me just paste this in here. Yeah. So assume I'm a US retiree living on 2,200, or I need to make that 1,900, from Social Security IRA distributions. Please recommend countries where I can live comfortably, including visa options for retirees and an estimate of monthly cost of living. Show this in a table so we can see what's happening. And let's go ahead and click the run button. And ChatGPT begins to provide an answer. Sometimes it gives you answers in two versions to see which style you like to use. So this is one of those instances where it's popped up with a response 1 and a response 2. And it lays them side by side, and there's some subtle differences in the layouts. So you can figure out which one you like and then select that response. And then from that point on, ChatGPT will respond using that model. So let's scroll down just a little bit. We see some notes at the bottom for each option, and you can say, I prefer this option, or I can prefer this response. So here it says it's a table of retiree-friendly countries living on $1,900 a month. Yet when we look at Mexico, the very first one, we see that it requires $2,600 a month. So that's a problem. But if we look over to the right for Mexico, it says $1,400 per month. So clearly there's a data issue in these two tables. But still, Mexico's on both tables, and we can dive deeper into it later. Now let's look at Portugal, 98.40 for the year. Thailand, 2,000 a month, and that's again over our threshold. And then Philippines, it says there are several options, but it doesn't tell us what it is. Look down to Nicaragua, 600. Morocco requires proof of income, etc. Let's look at the notes that come along with this. Now, the visa income requirements often exceed your 1,900 income, it says, yet it provides a number of examples where it's less than 1,900. So there's some inconsistency here, but it's still a great place to begin. 2,600 up there, 2,000. Every other one is under the 1,900 threshold. So even the notes can be somewhat misleading. Let's look over to the right. Looking over to the right, we can see that Mexico's income requirement now is showing as 1,400. And that's kind of odd because in the first table it said 2,600. So we'll challenge this later. Next, let's look at Portugal. It's 9,800 a year, and that's clearly well within the 1,900 a month. And then there's Colombia, 950 a month. Thailand at 2,000 a month, outside our threshold. Ecuador at 1,275 a month. And Philippines, $800. Whereas here it says several options are available. So you can see that there's some disconnect between these tables. But still, many of the same countries appear on both tables, giving us a place to begin our research. Let's look at Nicaragua, 600 a month, and look at the notes. All costs include rent in a modest 1 to 2 bedroom apartment, non-luxury, in a medium-sized city. In some countries with strong expat communities, etc. Looking at Thailand, it says 2,000 up there. So we said, let's look at this table again. We selected the option. We like the option on the right, and it now works with this option only. And it asks, would you like a follow-up table focusing on healthcare, quality, etc.? And we don't want that for all the countries, because when you look at this, you might say, gee, I like these 1, 2, 3, or 4 countries. So we can narrow the search down immediately. In our example, I'd like to use Mexico, which has an income requirement here of 1,400 or 2,600. We'll see. I also like to consider Portugal and Costa Rica. Costa Rica has an income requirement of 1,000 a month. So it says, would you like a follow-up table on healthcare, quality, etc.? So we're going to narrow this down and pick just the countries we're going to sample so we don't get overwhelmed by data. We've already decided we like three of these countries. So we'll say, yes, please do that for me. For Mexico, let's throw in Costa Rica and Portugal. And then we submit the request. And now it's narrowed it down to just those countries. Now you could pick any other three countries or any two countries or any number of countries, depending on how much data you want. So it says Mexico has good private healthcare in major cities, and the climate varies by region. In Costa Rica, it's a public system, and private care is affordable. There's a tropical and mild climate. Portugal has excellent healthcare system, ranked high, and Mediterranean mild winters and warm summers. It says, would you like a chart visualizing this comparison in a PDF? If you're ready, you can do that, but I don't here. Let's look at the summary. Portugal is high in international ratings on healthcare, but although all three have excellent care. Climate, Portugal and Costa Rica are very comfortable. That's interesting. Costa Rica's Central Valley. Costa Rica's coast can be pretty warm. Lifestyle, Mexico is closest to the US. Costa Rica is kind of in the same time zone. So one of the benefits is these countries are closer and the time zones are almost aligned. So let's dig a little deeper. What if I wanted to search by a specific amount of earnings? Say I want to search by a specific earnings level. I know what my earnings are. I can say, if I earn this amount of money per month, I'm going to use a larger number, 2,500, but you could use any number you like. Show me retirement-friendly countries where I can live on that, including visa information and healthcare access and safety level. It comes back and it says, with $2,500 a month in income, there are many options for comfortable retirement, higher living standards, and it updates that list for us. It shows a check mark whether your income meets the visa requirement, that little green check mark. The little plus is the access to healthcare, and then there's the basic safety. So looking at this, we've got a large list. Healthcare access is quality and ease of entry is indicated here with a number ranking, and safety ranking is shown by Numbeo and the Global Peace Index. Now, Numbeo is feedback from people who live there, who say what their perception is. Global Peace Index is driven by numbers. You need to understand what the sources are and how they report. The $2,500 a month, you can stay in almost any of the popular retiree destinations. Then it asks, would you like to focus on urban versus rural, climate, etc.? So you can drill deeper and deeper down into the database to figure out which ones might be closer to what you'd love to have. So let's narrow this down a little bit and narrow our search down to Portugal and Costa Rica and say, for these two countries, list the most retiree popular. So we're trying to find where retirees are going. So the most retiree popular urban and rural cities or areas. So the question is for Portugal and Costa Rica, list the most retiree popular urban and rural areas. And here it goes. So it breaks it out by Portugal first and Costa Rica second. And it says in Portugal, the urban areas are Lisbon, Porto, and Cascais. Lisbon's the capital, it's a metro area. Porto is a nice town in the north. Cascais is on the west of Lisbon. And then it lists some other areas, the Alentejo region and the Monichique and Tavira region, which are wine country, etc. Portugal offers a wide spectrum from the city of Porto or Lisbon, it says down here. Costa Rica has a strong central valley, which is the cooler part for retirees. And the coast can be warm, but appeals to people who like the outdoors and the ocean. So Lisbon here again, capital city, culture, museums, hospitals, good infrastructure, etc. So ChatGPT's provided this information. Porto, it's a northern coastal city. It's cooler, nice walking city. Cascais is a little more upscale on the west of Lisbon. And then we dive into rural small towns, Silver Coast towns like Nazare, uh, Alentejo region, and Monchique and Tavira. The Silver Coast is the coastal lifestyle. The Alentejo is wine country, olive groves, peaceful countrysides, etc. And then the Tabira areas are quieter inland areas. Looking at Costa Rica, we can see we've got San Jose Metro, which is a very busy area. It's a capital, and it's got a lot of hospitals, shopping, dining, etc. Grecia is close to San Jose. Great cooler weather, they say, so that might be a factor with good views. Popular with US retirees. And Heredia is the suburban feel. When we dive into the rural areas, we come to Atenas. Frequently, it's considered the best climate in the world. And I've been to Atenas. It's a nice place. It's a little rural. San Ramon is affordable with soft scenic mountains. And then there is the Uvita area, which is lush jungles and beaches, if you like that. So you can see how ChatGPT can take the income level you establish and dive down into the things that are important to you, whether it's health, it's safety, it's accessibility, transportation, etc. Now let's compare rents just to get an idea how this holds up. Remember, we're working with $2,500 at this point. So it says, please compare the rent for a two-bedroom house or apartment in Lisbon, which is the capital city, which should be quite expensive. And let's pick the Alentejo region, and then San Jose metro area, that's the capital in Costa Rica, and Grecia. So we've got a range here from the center of town of the capital to a rural area. And we're going to compare the rents just to get an idea. The average monthly rent for two-bedroom homes in a retiree-friendly area of Portugal and Costa Rica in early 2025. So in Lisbon, it says it's 1780 to 2600. Well, if we're making 2500, that's going to be a challenge. On the Alentejo region, it's 950 to 1200. That comfortably fits into the $2,500 range. Moving down to San Jose, 1200 to 1800 doesn't leave a lot from 2500 for other expenses. Grecia, 800 to 1200, a smaller town with a mild climate. It says in summary that with an income of $2,500, you can comfortably live in any of these areas. So you can see Lisbon's going to be somewhat tight, if not impossible. So the data might somewhat contradict itself, but it's still directionally correct, and this is the starting place for our research. Once you narrow down a specific country, that's when you dive into the details and check into the visa and ask much more focused questions to get ChatGPT to give you meaningful answers. So let's ask another question just to understand the landscape from tax perspective. Are U.S. expats taxed on Social Security, IRA distributions, pensions, and interest, and perhaps other income too? But it's earned in the US. This is the point we're trying to make. If you earn money in the US and you're living in these countries, are these income buckets taxed? And we picked the countries here that we want to target: Portugal, Mexico, and Costa Rica. So for these three countries, what is the tax situation? We'll let ChatGPT go ahead and give us the data first. So in Portugal, Social Security is not taxed. Now, again, we need to validate this because ChatGPT sometimes gets it wrong. IRA is taxed and interest income is taxed. In Mexico, Social Security is not taxed and IRA distributions are taxed, and so is interest income. And in Costa Rica, Social Security, IRA distributions, and U.S. interest earned overseas in the U.S. outside of Costa Rica are not taxed. Now remember that this information may be outdated. We need to validate and double check on this, but this is a great place to begin our search. Now, in summary, it gives the table for all of them, and we can see what's taxed. Now, the tax rates can be different, and there are tax treaties with some countries to avoid double taxation. Let's scroll up to the top and look at that list one more time. Here we are, we're looking at Mexico, Portugal, and then we've got Colombia, Thailand. So there's a long list to choose from. Philippines, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Vietnam, etc. So let's take a look at the Mexican data here. In one place it said it's 1,400 a month. In another place it said it's $2,600 a month. It also said you need 23,000 of savings here, and another place it said something like 43,000. So what's going on here? Now, if we were to pick Mexico, here's how we dive into the data to challenge ChatGPT to give us more helpful information. So you say to ChatGPT, What are the requirements? So this is the same question being asked in a different way for a temporary residence visa for Mexico. So we're targeting Mexico here to validate how this works. And it goes away and comes back with an answer. When you look at this answer, we can see it says the visa is 1 year initially, renewable up to 4 years, not allowed to work by default, and it is a path to permanent residency. And then right there it says monthly income requirement is 2,600 to 3,000, and that's completely different from the previous numbers of 1,400 and 2,300. And it says it must be consistent income, pension, Social Security, IRA distributions, may require bank statements, etc. Or you need to have savings or investments of 43 to 50,000 in a bank account to get this visa. And these numbers change as the Mexican minimum wage changes because that's the baseline that they use. So now that we know that the visa is good and you could qualify if you had these numbers, the numbers still are contradictory, but we know how it works. So you apply at a Mexican consulate, you receive a temporary visa, you enter Mexico, and you exchange your visa for a resident card. Then you can open bank accounts, sign leases, apply for a driver's license, get insurance, etc. But we can see that there's still an anomaly in the income requirement that's being listed here. So what we're going to do is ask it another question to see whether we can get ChatGPT to dive deeper and figure out where the disconnect is. Is the income requirement 2,600, which it says up here, or is it 1,400, as you said before? ChatGPT takes a deeper look. It understands that there's a disconnect between the two data points. And now it dug deeper and it came back with a more detailed analysis. It says, as of 2025, the financial requirements of Mexico's temporary have been increased due to adjustments tied to the maximum minimum wage. Currently, you must demonstrate a monthly income of 4,185 over the past 6 months, or have savings of 69,750. The sources are provided now, so you can click on them. Now, what happens in the US is each Mexican consulate in the US sets a different threshold. Some are higher than others, so it's not a single answer for all US residents. Previously, it says lower income thresholds around 1,400 were mentioned based on UMA. And that's interesting. So in an earlier research, it pulled up that data. So let's keep in mind that ChatGPT has some challenges. And here's how you can use ChatGPT to find the countries that fit your income profile. So this video should have been helpful in showing you how to search for countries that you qualify to enter with a visa based on the income levels that you have. And then once you've identified that list, we've shown you how you can drill down into climate, safety, weather, healthcare, accessibility, transportation, etc. We have another video for higher net worth individuals, those who have over $700,000 in assets. And we partner with an affiliate, it's called Wealth and Borders, which provides reports of those who have higher assets. And of course, I've got to go shout out to our partner here, who's Flippers Up, a reason why many people are looking at why they might want to leave the US. I hope you found this helpful, and thank you so much for watching.